We'll take a look at today's papers now, and we're joined by foreign policy writer Thom Woodroofe. Tom, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. In fact, those foreign policy issues and the idea of relationships and who's getting along with who, that's central to a lot of what you're talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the first thing obviously I want to cover is Gillard's trip to the US.
Yes, how do you reckon she'll go?
Oh, I think it's a bit of a non-event. In sort of, I guess, everyday terms, it's a bit more of a sort of, her and Obama have already had their first date, and this is really the stage of sleeping over at each other's houses. But the only thing that will come out of this trip will be the date that Obama will reciprocate and come to Australia.
So we'll certainly have to get something, if not a date, a firm indication of a period when he's coming.
Exactly. All the difficult issues in terms of talking about carbon taxes or talking about sort of troop commitments in Afghanistan, there'll be nothing that comes out of that if they're even on the agenda.
It's going to be a hard task for Obama. He'll be in his Situation Room discussing with the Pentagon generals wargaming strategies in Libya. Then a tap on the shoulder from the Chief of Staff, Mr. President, the Australian Prime Minister's upstairs for a chat.
Oh, now?
Really?
Damn.
Well, it is important to remember.
It's a bad week for any foreign leader to be visiting Washington.
Absolutely, and it isn't a state visit, it's just a bilateral visit, so Obama does multiples of these per week.
Let's have a look at the Herald Sun, page 10, because that, of course, like most of the newspapers, is covering. That's the footage from overnight. That's actually Gillard and the first bloke landing there at Andrews Air Force Base to be greeted by Bomber Beazley. So we finally get to see him in this is his first really public kind of official airing. I mean, certainly with the visiting Prime Minister. Yes.
Yeah, he's obviously he's made a very big splash in the local diplomatic corps. He's obviously got, as Tom would know, very good contacts with the administration as well. But his first big public airing, and as is tradition, the ambassador shepherds the Prime Minister around town, and would love to get in his brain just to think whether
what a lovely job,
what the situation would be like if he had to shepherd the former Prime Minister around.
Oh, he's loving the job though. I mean, when I was there in July last year for the leadership dialogue between the two countries, Rudd was there at the time as well, but Beazley was just absolutely in his element. I don't think there'd be any animosity as to the fact that Gillard was part of the team that knocked him off, of course.
No, he's got a nice consolation prize.
She's the fourth Australian Prime Minister to address the Congress. A huge honour for any leader.
Exactly, and I think Rudd will be somewhere in the middle. He's banging on a desk in a hotel, I guess, with disappointment that he never got that opportunity. But again, it's probably more just the stage that the alliance is at in terms of its 60-year anniversary, and also the fact that Obama's been in office a few years, that's happening now.
Let's have a look at a Sunday Age piece that you wanted to look at from yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think we're missing that at the moment. We might try and bring that up in a little bit later. But tell us what that story is and why that's caught your eye.
Yeah, there were two stories on Rudd over the weekend. So one was focused on the fact of does he have ambitions to become Prime Minister and calling him delusional, and the other, which was this one, was effectively saying look how far and wide he has travelled in the last two trips as Foreign Minister, and there's all pretty much positive coverage as to his role. And that's really the message that I wanted to ram home here, that Rudd, like Beazley, I guess, also as a consolation prize, is very much in his element with foreign policy. And I think there's certainly been a bit of a media shift in the way that they've approached Rudd's role, not necessarily his ambition, but his role. When he was Prime Minister with foreign policy, he was generally tagged as, being a bit of a micromanager and coming up with thought bubbles, whereas now he's very much seen as sort of the quintessential Foreign Minister, and his ideas are, some of them have been even taken up by Gillard quite strongly.
Yeah, he's in his element. Are you one of these people who thinks that Kevin Rudd really, sincerely believes he has a hope's chance in hell of getting back to the Lodge?
I think he probably does. I think on one arm he probably wouldn't be staying around, though he probably would be waiting for an international gig that's better than what he has. But he is absolutely embracing it, and I have no doubt that he probably thinks he could get back, just like Malcolm Turnbull probably thinks he could get back on the other side of the chamber.
One ambition is slightly more achievable than the other, though. I think you know which one to which I am referring.
Yeah, but politics is just, always unbelievable. When we look at the last 12 months, things that people never thought would happen.
Yes, that's very true. Yep, then I've been reminded of that myself, and I now remind others of it. Can you just share with us that
the cartoon of the morning by
it follows on very nicely
David Rowe. We can't show it to you, but it's a lovely snapshot of Gillard and Obama with the US Capitol in the background. The Prime Minister saying, the guy is delusional. He still thinks his countrymen love him, and he refuses to accept the patently obvious that he's unfit to lead his people. To which Mr. Obama replies, so you wouldn't say he's happy as Foreign Minister?
It's true. I mean, the delusional line was being applied to Julia Gillard, but it's very nicely turned around there by David Rowe. In the
I think he's
Financial
also
Review.
using a lot of the language they were using against Gillard last week when they were comparing her to Gaddafi, weren't they, in terms of loving my people.
That's right, yep. Now, the Wall Street Journal has got an article you want to look at too.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal Sunday edition had a great piece on the US sort of, I guess, approach to all the Middle East uprisings at the moment and how they've kind of shifted, I guess, in their attitude towards looking at countries that they need to actually have as allies, and rather than focus on necessarily democratic ambitions with those countries, such as Yemen and Bahrain, to more so focus on effectively what they're calling regime change within the internal sense. So they're talking about effectively improvements within the current regimes in those countries. And you see that perpetuated by things like the US Navy's Fifth Fleet is based in Bahrain and so forth. So they're kind of a definitive shift in their approach somewhat there.
Now, Geoffrey Robertson, writing in The Age, is very much in favour of a foreign-led regime change in Libya.
As am I. Well, he's arguing what is effectively what's called within international relations the responsibility to protect principle, or the R2P principle, made famous by Gareth Evans, the former foreign minister here. He had an op-ed, I think, in the Financial Times last week or the week before, actually, on it, and then this is sort of, I guess, kicking that debate, continuing along. But it outlines, I guess, the legality of that quite a lot, which is often misunderstood. So, for example, most people would think it is illegal for an international force to set up a no-fly zone, or indeed to take a step further and militarily incur into Libya, whereas under certain principles it is actually permitted. And the UN statement last week on Libya was probably the first time something as definitive was ever said that would allow such a thing to occur.
Some, and I'm sure like Geoffrey Robertson, I've not read this article this morning, but have gone further and said that actually not only can they have that responsibility now, they have that obligation, because the Section 7 has been triggered by the fact that you've had an obvious and clear statement by the leader saying, I will kill my people.
Bloodshed.
What was the line last week? I will fight to the last man and the last woman. What else do you need to hear?
Well, that's the point. I mean, R2P effectively has a very hardcore legal element, which is not really debatable, and once the precedent is there, you've got the ability to do it, but then there's, I guess, a bit of a moral argument, and that's where the nuance is. But I agree with you. I think it should be done, though setting up a no-fly zone only sets the scene to escalate more.
Good to see you again, Tom. Thanks so much.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.